right, we are continuing on with characteristics of life, and we're going to talk about characteristics 4, 5, and 6 today. And they're listed up at the top. We have response, growth and differentiation we're going to put together, and number 6 is homeostasis. So let's go ahead and jump in. When we talk about response, we're talking about response to a stimulus. And this means that when an organism is introduced to some kind of a stimulus from the environment, it will respond to it in some way. Now, we can break down stimuli into two groups. We have biotic and abiotic. So, abiotic and biotic. And in your vocabulary words, you had the prefix A. A means without, and bio is life. So if we're talking about a biotic stimulus, this is something that's living. And if we have an abiotic stimulus, this is non-living. So if you were the example, how do you respond to stimuli? If you're outside and it's a very hot day, you might go inside and get a drink. The heat is something that's non-living. That would be an abiotic stimulus. If you're outside and a brown bear comes around the corner of your house and chases you, you would run into the house, but that would be a biotic stimulus. But you're responding to that in some way. Now, in both of these, we talk about the response being movement, but it doesn't necessarily have to be movement. It could be anything else too. It could be maybe you would sweat, or if it's a single-celled organism, maybe if it's in a salty environment, it will try to change the amount of liquid in its vacuole. So a response can be movement, but it's any type of change in the organism, and it's in as the result of something that happens inside the environment. We're going to put grow and differentiate together as number 5, but they don't mean the same thing. So growth and differentiation do not mean the same thing. Grow means to become larger. Or increase the amount of cells. So for example, we all start as one cell and we end up with several trillion cells. So we've increased the number of cells. In the process, we also become larger. But when you're a single cell, when you go from 1 cell to 2 cell, yeah, you're a little bit larger. There isn't a big change in size, but we did increase the amount of cells. Differentiation is an example of differentiation. Is you start out as a single cell, but you end up with 4 different types of tissues in your body: muscle tissue, nerve tissue, connective tissue. The last group is called epithelial. And so for example, if we look at a cell from your cheek, so a cheek cell, the starting cell, let's do the starting cell. All right, so your starting cell looks a little bit like that. That's the nucleus, your eukaryotic, and your cell membrane. When you are fully developed, you have nerve cells. And a nerve cell, it's a little bit like that. We've got a nucleus here. You've got a red blood cell. It's very teeny. It doesn't even have a nucleus. You have a muscle cell. Long. Got some stripes. You've got an epithelial cell that looks like this. Got some stuff at the top. You have connective tissue cells that look like this. No, that should be smaller. There's a actually, that'd be a muscle cell. There's a connective tissue cell that looks like that. And they all start from a cell that looks like this. So differentiate, the definition here means to change. So we're differentiating. We're going from this one starting single cell, and some of your trillions of cells, they look different. Does that mean these have different DNA? Nope. The same DNA that you have here is the same DNA you have here. So we have the same DNA, same 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs here and here. But the reason they look different is we're turning different, we're going to learn proteins off and on, and we have different parts of the chromosomes that get expressed. So our cells end up with a very different shape. That's differentiation, to change. The last one is called homeostasis. Homeostasis. And stasis means steady, homeo means the same. And so the definition lies in the pieces. Homeostasis is the ability of an organism to maintain an internal set of conditions. Let's write that out. The ability of an organism to maintain an internal set of conditions, like temperature, let's see, blood sugar. We'll use these two. So let's do a little homeostasis scale here for temperature. And we've got a needle here. Got a dial, and we have values. This is going to be temp. Well, what temperature, when you take your temperature, what should it be? Say 98.6. That is for mammals, and specifically for humans. Actually, I'm not sure if other mammals maintain the same. You want your dial to always be pointing at 98.6 degrees. So what'll happen? You're outside, you get hot, and this starts to track up this way, and we're going up into like the 98.8 or so. The sun's beating down on us. What do? We start to sweat. We want to go in. We have the prompt to go drink water as a result of sweating. Our pores open up to help bring the blood to the surface. Our face gets red, and it brings the temperature back down. We're outside, it's a really cold day. This temp starts to drop. What do? We start to shiver. Our pores close, the blood draws away from the top of the skin, and it pulls us back up to the center. Well, why is this important? Why is this a characteristic of life? If you can't maintain homeostasis, you're not going to survive. So up here, when we get up into the, I don't know, 103s, 104s, 105s, you start to run into risk to life. You can actually cook your own brain, or your brain can cook inside your body is a better way to say that. So as the temp goes up, if you don't pull this back to center, you can die. Same thing here. If we go too far down, we'll freeze to death. And so we have to keep that 98.6 degrees. And that's an example of homeostasis temperature. With blood sugar, your brain, so this is important for the brain. The brain has to have glucose, and the glucose floats around or is found in your blood. So as your glucose level drops, your brain triggers your body. So if this was glucose, your brain would trigger your body to eat something sweet and bring it back up to the center. Or if your blood sugar goes too high, your body has mechanisms to grab that sugar out of your blood and bring it back down. But you've got to be able to keep these internal conditions, or you could die. So all of these are further characteristics of life. Something alive is going to respond to a stimulus in its environment. It has to be able to grow. And now this differentiation is only sometimes. Because if you're a single-celled organism, you don't really get the chance to differentiate much. So in the case of a bacteria, we really don't see this so much, but the bacteria do have to be able to grow. And then finally, you have to be able, even if you're a single-celled organism, to keep these internal conditions like temperature. Now, a bacteria is going to have a different set of internal conditions, and it's going to be much simpler, but they can maintain homeostasis. So those are kind of three quick hitters, characteristics 4, 5, and 6. And in characteristic number 7, we're going to talk about evolving and adapting. That's it for 1.05.